Hi again everyone, and welcome to another video here from Mad About Madeira. And today I want to talk about a topic that's going to be, well, I've been saying this for a while now. It's going to be somewhat controversial, but it doesn't have to be actually. I think it's going to be controversial because I am going to speak on one side of a spectrum because I don't really agree with the other side. And of course, people are going to take sides and people may not be too happy with some of the things that I may go say. I am not saying that everyone will, but there are probably some people who may just not agree with what I'm about to talk about. Recently I was speaking to someone from Portugal and I was expressing some concern about something. And they said to me that in the last election there in Portugal, I haven't confirmed this, I didn't look it up, I'm taking their word for it, and there's no reason for them to make up anything or lie to me, but they said that the previous election in Portugal, the right-wing party in Portugal only won 10% of the vote. So in the back of my mind, I felt good about that, but I was like 10%, that's still, still significant. Of course, it's not as big as 90%, but it's still somewhat significant. You can look at it in one of two ways. You can say, hey, that's still a segment of the population there that holds on to right-wing beliefs or right-wing ideas. Or you can look at it the other way around. Hey, that's a huge minority there, so nothing to really worry about. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video, it's because I am a history buff. I pay attention to history. And a big reason why I pay attention to history, I don't want to be one of those people that repeats it. So, as a result, I study certain things in history and how humans have handled certain things. And it's so funny that so many things tend to repeat themselves in history, and one of those things that tend to repeats itself, it happens to be genocides, persecutions of minority groups, and so forth. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be, because in some cases I am a minority group, and I may be a part of a minority group that a majority group may not like, may not care about, may not like to have around. And I don't want to be on that end. And anyone who knows me knows that I follow a simple mantra in life, and that is, what I don't want done to me, I don't want to do it to other people. So why am I saying all of that? I'm saying that because there is something going on in Europe, not just in Europe, here in the United States also, but there's something that's going on that disturbs me, and that is the spread of right-wing sentiments and right-wing candidates who have been winning office in certain countries in Europe, like Italy, for example, which is what's kind of like sparking this video right now, like Italy. And if they don't win, they're coming close to winning or becoming a threat in places like France, for example. Now, some people may look on and say, why are you jumping on the right wing, and what's wrong with the right wing? When you think of right wing, and I'm not saying they all mean bad or they all have bad designs or whatever, but they tend to cling to certain things that I just don't agree with, that I don't go along with. Now, when you hear right wing, I tend to think that they spark nationalistic ideas. And of course, a certain orange fellow on this side once upon a time said, well, hey, if I love my country, that means, and you want to call me a nationalist, well, big deal, I love my country, so if you want to call me a nationalist, well, let it be. Well, you see, when I think about those things sometimes, it seems to me like right-wing candidates come to power following a particular strategy, or they tend to hold the same ideas. One of those ideas is generally this: it's us first, our people first. And when they say that, it sounds okay. It sounds okay. I mean, you think of your home, you will think that you will take care of the people inside your home first before you go and help other people. But a lot of time when they say us first, there's more to it than that. And what I've gathered, when they say us first, it's like us first and reject those other people. Not us first and then help out other people, but us first and forget about everybody else. You know, shut the shop down. We don't want to take care of anybody else but our people. Why should we be taking care of those people over there? They're not us. They're not part of us. So that's one thing. And that usually then feeds into the whole, or one comes before the other, where it's an anti-immigrant thing. Like, look at those people over there. They're not a part of our tribe. They're not a part of our group. They are others. And then when it starts with that, then the next thing that tends to follow is scapegoating and fear-mongering. Well, those people over there are coming over here to take what is ours. They're coming to take our jobs. They're coming to take our women. They're coming to take our land. They're coming to do this. They're coming to hurt us. They're coming to harm us. They're coming to do bad things to us. And how I know this to be true, because this has happened throughout history. How I know this to be true, in the election here in 2016 in the United States, prior to that election, a particular candidate, who I'm not going to mention a name, but you'll pretty much know he's orange, you know, at the convention that they generally have, is like a rally that they have to kind of like rally that party behind one particular candidate. He had someone come out on the stage. Person had my complexion, and the person came out on the stage, and that person made a speech basically stating that his son was killed by an illegal immigrant. Now, when he said it that way, you would think that an illegal immigrant came up and stabbed his son to death. That's not what happened. Or shot his son to death. That's not what happened. Apparently, this person was driving and they were drunk. And they got into an accident that took this man's life. Sad story in that case. But what was presented that night was a fear-mongering that, you see, these illegal immigrants are over here to kill us. That's what they're here to do. Now, it was a drunk driving incident, so it was not a deliberate act. Well, of course, drinking, that's a different story. But it wasn't like the drunk driver got out and said, I am going to kill this person. I'm going to premeditate. I'm going to just have this premeditated thought that I'm going to drive my car and kill this individual. But the way it was presented, it's like, ooh, watch out for the big, bad, evil immigrant. They're coming here to kill us. Then, of course, there was this whole thing about there's a caravan of people coming toward the border, and they're coming in, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. They're going to spread COVID, and they're going to kill everybody. So that's the next thing that generally tends to happen. So you have the, it's all about us. It should be about us only, not about those people over there. Then it's the, watch out for those people over there. They're dangerous. They're out to get us. They're going to take our land. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And now you have in Hungary, for example, you have a right-wing person up there who is basically saying that we should keep our race pure, our people pure. The implication is we don't want to have other people coming into our country. And our local people begin marrying or having children with those other people over there, because then it contaminates our blood. It contaminates our bloodline. Where have we heard this before? These are generally the arenas that the right wing works in. And when they do that, they tend to do it in a sense of nationalism. It's all about pride in our country, right? That's what we're doing. We're just proud of our country. And we're speaking up for our country. And we just want to just make sure that we're taking care of our people. We're just being proud of our country. That's all we're doing. What's the problem? But it's usually a pride at the expense of other people. And when I say at the expense of other people, we generally know that all throughout the world, you're going to find people from different groups living in other countries. And when I say at the expense, it's more or less like, you know what? And here's another thing. It comes around to the scapegoating also. So I'm sorry to jump off of that point, but the scapegoating. That if anything goes wrong, you have someone to blame. If you're a political leader and things are going wrong in your country, you can turn around and say, well, don't look at me. It's those people over there. They're the ones that's causing all the problems. Don't look at me. It's those people over there. Look at what they're doing and whatever. Take the attention off of me and focus it over here. Don't pay attention to me with all my corrupt nonsense and everything I'm doing. Let's blame these people over here for all that's going wrong. Isn't that what happened in Nazi Germany? Isn't that what went on in Rwanda? Wherever you find genocide, wherever genocide ends up happening, or persecutions of other groups end up happening, it generally starts with this idea of it's us and we need to be fearful of those people over there. It's happening in China right now. It tends to happen all the time. So I'm the type of person, I don't want to buy into that kind of ideology or those ideologies. Now, don't get me wrong. People should have a pride in their country. That's correct. People should feel proud about their country. That is also correct. But you can also be mindful of other people who may not be from your country. And what it does, it tends to create a vicious cycle. A group comes into your country, or groups of people enter your country. Instead of welcoming them in, the human nature is to be fearful of things we don't understand, or to be fearful of others. It's a part of our evolution, and it has worked out in certain cases. You see something that you're not aware of, you tend to put up a little defense, just be careful. But what happens here, it's like human beings, again, this old primitive thought, like, look at those people over the mountain coming over here. Threat. Put up your guard. Get ready to fight. Or get ready to run. But in most cases, get ready to fight. Look at those people over there. Are they coming to harm us? Are they coming to do something to us? That's generally what happens. Now, the flip side has also happened in history. And the ironic thing about it is that many of these places that are throwing up these defenses and having a problem with immigrants and having a problem with other groups of people were once upon a time immigrants themselves. I'll give you a prime example. Here in the United States, you have a segment of this population who look down their glasses and look down their noses at people coming from the South, Mexico, or from Central America, coming through and trying to enter this country. Of course, there are asylum seekers, and then there are people who are coming here or trying to come into the country illegally. I understand that. Now, keep in mind that one of these states that they come through, or they attempt to cross into, is the state of Texas. Well, would you know that back in the middle or early 1800s, the land that we call Texas today was a part of the country of Mexico. Because the area where Texas is, which would have been towards the northeastern part of Mexico at that time, it was sparsely populated. So the Mexicans, like the Americans did later on, they said, you know what, we need people up there. We need to have people in that area to build up that area. This area, it was a state known as Tejas. We need to build up that area. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take Mexicans from other part of Mexico, and we're going to encourage them to move up into that area. They gave them incentives like, we'll give you land, we'll build houses for you. So if you just move into this area, we're good. But one of the things that the Mexican authorities also did, there was a country forming right above them known as the United States, or had already formed but was expanding. The Mexicans said, hey, you Americans, you can come over here and live in the land also. We don't mind. You can come in. We'll accept a few of you in. So just think of it like immigration back then. So they allowed them to come in. But the problem was the Americans came in and they wanted to bring their enslaved people with them. Mexico had ended slavery in the years prior. But now these Americans were coming into Mexican land and were like, hey, we're bringing these enslaved Africans with us. And Mexico was like, no. We don't tolerate that in our country. And the Americans were like, what? And before you know it, the Americans just didn't like what the Mexicans were telling them, didn't like the rules of the land. And they decided to have an attitude. And before you know it, war broke out between these Americans living in Texas, in Mexican land, and the Mexican government. And all hell broke loose, and then we had the Alamo, and we had battles going back and forth. And before you know it, these Americans eventually won and declared that area that was formerly Mexico, declared themselves an independent country. And later on, they were annexed into the United States of America to become the state of Texas. So that is a case where groups of people come in, and when they come in, after they arrive at a certain number, the local population may start fearing what they're up to. What are they going to do next? They're becoming too numerous. They're becoming too powerful. They're becoming too big, and we've got to keep an eye on them. We also find this in the biblical story of the Exodus. Not that but it's just a story in the Bible. And it's in the book of Exodus. What did the Pharaoh fear? He noticed that the Hebrews were growing in great numbers in the land of Egypt. And what happened? Hey, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop them from expanding, because what's going to happen if a war breaks out and they side with the enemy? Then we're outnumbered. So we've got to stop this Hebrew population from growing. And if I remember the story correctly, the Pharaoh basically said, listen, kill all their... If I'm not mistaken, I think it was kill their children or kill the firstborn. I think it was kill the children. Basically, a form of infanticide back then. Let's just kill all the children to minimize their numbers, that they don't grow as rapid as they're growing right now. So that has always and also been a fear of leaders living in certain countries when they see minority groups begin to grow and expand, because all of a sudden they become a threat to them. It's like, hey, they're growing in numbers. They're dwarfing us. They're eliminating our culture. They're diluting our culture. They're diluting our bloodline. So you hear all these type of things. And when you hear these type of things, this is the environment that creates nationalists. They tend to come in and say, hey, listen, we need to take our country back. Where have we heard that word? Where have we heard those words before? We need to take our country back. They're taking it away from us. We need to be fearful of them. We've got to watch out. They're growing in numbers. We're going to be the minority one day. And what's going to happen when we become the minority? When we've been running this joint for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. We can't have that minority become the majority. And before you know it, they're running for government. And before you know it, they're catering toward their people instead of us. It's always been a complexity when it comes to human interactions within nations, within empires, within kingdoms. So the best way to handle these type of things, in my estimation, and this is where I think the problem comes in, generally when this happens, there's always going to be some inequality. So you have your local population who are benefiting from certain things, which the nationalists will tell you it should be us first. We should get the bigger piece of the pie. This is our country. And those people over there should get this amount or nothing at all. They're not a part of us. But then when that minority group now begins to share within that pie, and you have moments where everybody's scrambling for the same resources, or everybody's fighting for the same resources, that human nature comes out. I've got to destroy the competition. I've got to get rid of the competition because I need to have it for me and my alone. I can't have them having what I have. Sharing? No, we're not having that. And that's the key word right there. We're not willing to share. It's mine, mine, mine. It's ours. You can't have it. So when you hear the right-wing rhetoric, it sounds innocent. Hey, we just love our country. We just want to make sure we're taking care of our people. Care of our people first. It sounds innocent on the surface. But if you look a little further down, it usually then blossoms into something else. It's us first. Then it becomes, well, if it's us first, we need to hold off the competition, or get rid of the competition, or those competing, or those threatening to take what belongs to us. Then the nationalism just starts up. It's all about us. But then it follows with the fear-mongering. Scared of those people. What are they doing? They're wearing turbans, or they speak a different language, or they look different. They have a different color. We need to be careful of them. We need to watch out. So I'm saying all of that when it comes down to now Portugal. And while it seems, and maybe Portugal is a little bit different, Portugal and Spain, because they went through a dictatorship. Both of those countries had dictatorships. And it may still be fresh because Portugal's dictatorship, I think, ended in 1973 and 1975. So it may still be fresh in the minds of people. And they're like, we don't want to return to that. We don't want to get back to that. We prefer to have a democracy where we're welcoming, where we're whatever. But the fear that I have in mind right now is the fact that Portugal is trending. And so people are moving there. Now, Portugal, Madeira, and those places, they've always had British people coming in and out, whatever. They've had a long history with one another. Europeans have found places like Madeira, and it's like a place they can go and visit. Some people go there to retire and so forth. But while that has always gone on, because of the pandemic, there's been kind of an influx. And the Portuguese government may not mind because so many people left Portugal during the recession, or as a fallout from the recession, they left Portugal, leaving an aging population behind. So the Portuguese government at this point right now may be like, hey, look, we need to build this country back up. So we're trying to just bring in as many people as we can, able-bodied, people can work, people, younger people. We're trying to bring them back in to replace all those people who left. So right now they're pretty open. But this does not mean, and I'm not saying all Portuguese people, as a matter of fact, the majority of Portuguese people, I could put my neck on the line that they're welcoming, they're loving, they're kind, and they're open-handed, and they're generous. But you're always going to have that segment in your population that's going to look on and say, we don't want to share. We don't want to allow other people to come in here. And it's, again, that's another crazy dynamic of how things work. Because a lot of times, and I do feel for those people when they say this type of stuff, because they're not just saying it just as empty words, so to speak. Like they're just saying something just for nothing. Because generally what happens a lot of times is that as other people come in, and you can have two groups of people coming in. And in Portugal, this is the type of group that's coming in, or you have both groups. You have those who are fortunate. They're coming from countries where they have money. And when they come in and they have money to spend, where the local population may not have that kind of money, a lot of times the governments of those countries may cater to the people with the money. They're coming in from other places and buying up land, buying up homes. And you know what's going to happen next? Because if you're coming in with money and you're willing to spend top dollar, spend anything to get what you want, well, your local people, whether it be people who are renting homes, renting apartments, whatever they are, they're going to be like, well, hey, listen, a local person can only afford to pay 700 euros for this apartment. But you're willing to spend how much? You, Mr. Rich person from the United States or from Germany or wherever, you're willing to spend $1,500 for this? Well, guess who they're going to pay attention to? So the next thing you know now the rents or the mortgages start to go up in price. And as they go up, there's a certain group of people who can still afford this, but your local population now is kind of like left behind. That's going to create animosity. That's going to create problems. And that's kind of where nationalism starts to be bred. It's like, well, look at these people coming in and they're using their big dollars and they're just driving the prices of things up. And now we can't afford anything. And we're the local people who live here. And our government is not paying attention to us because they're paying attention to these people who can pay the big bucks for these type of things over here. That's that group. Then you have the other group who don't have it like that. They're coming from poorer countries, war-torn countries, countries going through poverty and so forth, and they show up. And when they show up, the next thing you know, they may start to put a drain on the local system. They don't have the funds, they don't have the money, so the social services that are there, they're draining that, and they're pulling away from that because they don't have the money to afford certain things. So when that starts happening now, there's a drain on the social services, and the local people are caught in the middle now because it's like, well, they're going to look around and like, well, I've got to take my money and I've got to pay for this, but this person over here who came from such and such a country, because they're poor, they can get all these things free, but I have to go ahead and pay for them. So then you have the animosity going in the other direction. Look at those poor, impoverished people over there. They're getting this and they're getting that from our government. And look at me, I have to go out there and work so hard to make ends meet. So you have that other problem that goes on. And again, here again is where nationalism can creep in, because you're going to have somebody who's going to come in and start saying, why should we be paying attention to them? They're not our responsibility. They come from another country. Let them go back where they came from. And then you have the other rich folks up top, and it's going to be like, why are they coming over here and spending all this money and our government is catering toward them? We need someone who's going to cater toward our everyday people. Us first. Our country first. And you have the other part of nationalism that also happens, where there's a cry to bring the country back to a former glory, whether they're making up it or whatever it is. They want to make the country great again. They look back and it's like, look at our glorious past, when we were this, when we were that. And look at us now. These immigrants are pulling us down. They're dragging us down, and we have lost our way. We have lost our former glory, and we want to return to that. So put me in power, and I'll bring back that glory. Didn't this happen in Nazi Germany? And where have we, because you remember Nazi Germany after World War I, they were, after a very proud history prior to that, they got crushed in World War I. A certain individual came by and he started talking about the glory days of Germany. Let's take it back to that. Let's go back to that point. And we know what happened there. And we've heard similar type of language in this day and age, right here in this country, in the United States. We hear it in certain parts of Europe. We need to return back to a great time when we were great, when we were powerful, when people feared us. We need to return back to that. And where do you think that's going to lead? What can of worms do you think that's going to open when you start talking that kind of language? Because in this country, great for a certain group of people, there were other people who were being enslaved at that time. Great for some people in this country was back in a time when other groups of people did not have rights, even though they were Americans. So sometimes I wonder where this great was, actually. You know, what great period this was, that it was great for all Americans. There was never really a time that really sort of happened in the past. But yet, a certain individual comes by and he taps in to that sentiment. Look at this. Our country's horrible. That's another thing that they do. Our country's horrible. Look at this. Look at how everything is wrong. We need to return back to this time. And I'm going to be the one to bring us back to those glory days. Just vote for me. Put me in office. I'll bring it back there. So these things, they may sound innocent at the start, but a lot of times it eventually leads to persecution of minority groups. Worst case scenario can lead to genocide. It leads to scapegoating. You know, again, here in this country, you had a particular person calling COVID the China virus. And what happened after that? A lot of Asian people started being persecuted. So you see how that works? You start scapegoating people. So again, I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm saying all of this because I see Portugal, a country that I've fallen in love with, a country where a portion of my ancestry comes from. And I'm just hoping that the scourge of this right-wing nationalist ideas and ideologies do not enter Portugal or go mainstream. But of course, there are ingredients in place that could make that really happen. But I would not like to see it get to that point. Love the country. The Portuguese people can love their country all they want, and I would encourage that. And you can love your country, but not at the expense of hating other people. I can't tell the Portuguese government what to do. I can't tell Portuguese people what to think either. I'm just talking about my own thing, and it's just something I'm looking at and just keeping an eye on it. And it's like, okay, Italy just elected a right-wing candidate. You know, Hungary, we see what's going on up there. There's Belarus, we see what's going on up there. We hear certain things in Denmark and Sweden where you have certain groups of people who are like, get rid of this group of people. We don't want them here. And when you have those type of things that go on, and one last thing that I want to mention, when you have that's going on, when you start persecuting minority groups, when you start scapegoating them, when you start calling them names, when you start focusing on them and saying certain things, a lot of times what generally happens is because you were not welcoming to them, they start to get defensive. The next thing you know, they start to have gangs, like what happened here in the United States with the Italians and the Irish when they first came here, people persecuting them, and before you know it, they tend to become insulated, and they start building gangs to defend themselves when they go to school, when they go out on the streets. They start to, that's just the nature of things. They're now going to start looking around. We need to defend ourselves, and before you know it, now they start to react to the persecution. And when they start to react to the persecution, it may not be very pretty. In some cases, it has been bombs. In some cases, there has been stabbings. And when that happens now, it only fuels the nationalist idea. See, those people are dangerous. Look what they did to us. Look at what they're doing to us. We need to get rid of them. They stabbed one of our countrymen. They blew up a bomb in a market square somewhere. They're trying to end our culture. Or they're trying to force their culture on us. So when you have these type of things, you have to have smart leaders who know how to balance, take care of their people, but also take care of the stranger amongst them. The people that come from other places, that they're also not excluded, that they feel that they're welcomed. But with certain ground rules, mind you, that they follow certain laws, and that they be aware of the culture and traditions of a particular country that they go to, in a loving way. And when you do things like that, you tend to acclimate people easier. They tend to assimilate in better, and you won't have that pushback that comes when they tend to feel resentment toward them. But I'm not a political leader, just a thought that I think about. And I just don't want to see Portugal go down that path. I don't want to see it return to right-wing ideas, and before you know it, it's like one step away from a dictatorship, and we're back to square one where it was back then. I shouldn't say we, because I wasn't on the dictatorship, but the country go backwards in time, back to a dictatorship where someone comes in and says, give me all the power to fix all the problems. We've heard that over here also. Give me all the power to fix all the issues we're having. And I'll start with getting rid of all those other people that shouldn't be here. I'll get rid of all these other people we think shouldn't be here, whether they're here illegally or not. We'll get rid of all of them, or we'll scapegoat them to death, or we'll ban them from coming in here, and then it will just be us again for our beautiful country with just our own people who look like us, who talk like us, who think like us. But the world is pretty dynamic. People have always moved back and forth. There's going to be a time, at some point in time, you never know what can happen. Portugal had a massive earthquake back in the 1700s that devastated Lisbon. I'm not saying anything, I don't want anything like that to happen again. But what if something like that does happen again? This is nature. This is the world that we live in. If something like that happens again, and all of a sudden, lots of people have to pick up and leave Lisbon and become refugees, move into other countries, don't you think at that point they would want people to welcome them in? They would want people to open up their arms and say, we understand what you went through. We know that you're struggling in your country. We know what happened over there, and we're taking you in. At some point in time, every country or nation, people migrated from other places, and they went to other places. They've encountered prejudice, racism, bias, and so forth. But every group have come from somewhere else to end up somewhere else, and they had to depend on the mercy of the local population and the kindness of the local population in order to be assimilated in and become a part of that new country that they're in. Anyway, I said a whole lot. It's just something that's really been on my mind. And I know it might sound political, and in part it was, but I guess the whole reason for this video is me just basically saying, I just hope that Portugal does not fall into this trend that's going on when it comes to right-wing candidates and the nationalist ideas of us first, scapegoat these groups of people, keep our people pure. We don't want to be contaminated by those people over there. Because we've seen here in this country, in the United States, that it's diversity, like in places like New York City. It has its problems, but it's because New York City was diverse, because they opened up their doors, and most people, of course, came through Ellis Island and stayed in the New York City area, New Jersey, Connecticut, and those areas. And it's one of those reasons why that state is as rich as it is. It's as diverse. You go there, it's dynamic. It's one of the reasons why it's one of the appealing cities in the world, because of its diversity. Because the place is just made up of immigrants from everywhere. And the other state in the union that is just like that, it's California. And if you look at both states, because of that rich diversity, you go down the street, you can get some Italian food, some Chinese food, some Thai food. You can get some Jamaican food. You can get this, you can get that, you can get this, you can get that, you can do this, you can do... It makes it dynamic. That's why people are always clamoring to go to these places. In London, same exact thing. Just imagine going to a city where everybody just eats the same food, everybody looks alike, everybody lives alike. It's boring. Diversity does come with a price, yes. But it does make existing just so much better. Anyway, that's what I had to get off my chest today. It's another long video. I'm sorry about that. If you have any thoughts, you know where to find it. Just go down into the comment section and you can put your thoughts down there, okay? Anyway, thank you guys for checking in. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe. You can share this video if you want to. I would really appreciate it. Liking the video would be great, but subscribing is what we really would like you to do, okay? So you guys take care. Still working and getting over there to Madeira, okay? But I just want to just go ahead and put this video out just for you guys to have something in the interim, okay? You guys take care. Until the next video, thank you for viewing Mad About Madeira. Hi, I just wanted to just add a little bit more into that video. This is, well, clearly you can tell, this is after the video. I'm just adding another little piece in that I forgot to mention. Because I just saw it on the television and it reminded me of what this video is really all about. And that is here, locally in the state of Florida, there is a race for governor between two candidates. And one of the candidates is taking a page out of another former candidate's book. And when I say candidate, I mean a candidate for President of the United States, who is now a, hate to say this, but a former president. And he has taken out an ad, and what that ad has, it has a woman, again, my complexion. I'm mentioning that for a reason. And apparently, the woman lost her child or her son um, in a car accident, a tragic car accident where he died, and I suspect the other person survived. The person who caused the accident survived. Well, apparently, the other person, the person who survived, was an illegal immigrant. And an entire ad has been created around that. And the ad is stating that this candidate is trying to keep the state safe by making sure illegal immigrants are tracked down, to make sure that they're found, or to make sure that they're prevented from entering this state. So on the surface, it sounds okay, because true, you would want to make sure that people enter the country legally. I'm not against that. You would want to make sure that people who did not enter the country legally, that they're not here also committing crimes. The big elephant in the room, or the big thing that's missing from this, is the fact that every single day you have legal Americans driving drunk and killing people or injuring people. But the implication being made here is that you got to watch out for those illegal immigrants. You got to watch out for those immigrants. They're dangerous. See, they're killing our people on the roads in drunk driving incidents. Failing to mention that Americans kill each other every day. That Americans are driving around drunk and slamming into other people's cars, killing their passengers, killing other people on the roads. But it buys into this narrative that you got to fear the big, bad, evil, illegal immigrant because they're dangerous. They drive on the roads and they kill people. That's what they come to this country to do, with the intention of killing people. So an entire ad was created to drum up that fear again. And these are some of the things that I believe, and I'm not saying that the left wing, as they call it, I'm not saying that they don't have their own share of fear-mongering, mind you. Don't want anyone to get that, and I did not mention that, but I was more or less focusing on the right wing. But generally, the right wing has a particular playbook that they go by, and one of them is scapegoating. Or one of the things in that playbook is scapegoating, which is what's going on here right now. And, you know, if you really think about it, if you're driving down the road like here in Florida, and you're driving down I-95 or the Turnpike or the Sawgrass Expressway or I-75, and someone who looks like they're not from this country cuts you off on the road or creates a near accident, people make comments, you know, especially if they can look over and they can see the person looks like a particular type of person. They may look Haitian. They may look Mexican. They may look Middle Eastern. And say something happens on the road where someone almost gets hurt, almost killed, perhaps an accident. No one is stopping to say, oh, by the way, that accident you almost caused, can I see your passport to make sure you're an American citizen? No. Judgment is immediately passed. I'm sure that person is illegal. I'm sure that, because I've heard this before. I'm sure that person is whatever. So it's very easy to tap into that sentiment because there's already a distrust. There's already a fear of the other people, those other people. So it's very easy to tap into that sentiment that these people mean us harm. They're out to hurt us. So when you create an ad, using an ad about a drunk driving accident, and then you zone in on the other person behind that wheel who caused the accident and say, see, they're dangerous. They know what they're doing. They know what this is implying. They know what they're tapping into. And they know that message they want to send. So I just wanted to just add that in, just as a reminder of how these games can go and how dangerous they can become and how they can lead to problems down the road. Okay? So let me end the video here again. I just had to add this last part in. Thanks again for watching.